Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of the 2024 Oregon High School Football Clips of the Week training video. As always, all clips and rulings have been vetted through Oregon State rules interpreter Kevin Hatfield. We do not mean to embarrass or call out any individual official, association, player, school, or coach. Our goal is simply to get better and work towards our common goal of one rule, one mechanic, and one interpretation. With that said, let's jump into this week's Clips of the Week. The first couple clips that we're going to look at this week deal with equipment violations. And as we all know, there's a point of emphasis this year in Oregon on equipment violations. And they can be broken down into two main categories. The first being either improperly worn or missing mandatory equipment, and the second being the wearing of illegal equipment. In this first clip, we're going to look at the first example. And in this case, we have the holder on a try not wearing a mouthpiece. We can clearly see that it is dangling here. Now, there's no play here. There was never a ready for play blown, and the referee comes in to explain that to the holder. But we can clearly see that we have a mouthpiece dangling there. Now, is it possible that the holder was wearing a second mouthpiece in their mouth? That could happen, but if it does, that is still a violation of the equipment rule. Players are only allowed to wear one mouthpiece. Now, on the actual try, we're going to get a botched snap, but as the holder rolls out, we notice that that mouthpiece is dangling again from their face mask. So this is a violation of either the improperly worn, such as this case, or missing mandatory equipment. As a reminder, the team gets one warning for this type of violation. If this is not the first violation of the equipment rule, this would then result in a 5-yard delay of game penalty against the offending team. Now, compared to the first clip, we're going to see an example of illegal equipment. Now, this is from last year, but I wanted to bring this one up because as the temperatures start to cool down here in the next couple of weeks, we're likely to see players who are wearing head coverings under their helmet, either a ski mask, a balaclava, or some other garment under their helmet. And as a reminder, these are examples of illegal equipment. If it's hanging out from underneath their helmet, this will be considered illegal equipment. And I'm just going to let this clip roll. And what we're going to notice here is about half the team or so on offense is wearing these balaclavas. And again, these are illegal equipment. Now, as officials, it's important for us to try to catch as much of this as possible pregame. But as the temperatures start to cool, we're going to see more and more of this potentially. And we need to be proactive in our pregames to try to catch this. Now, should a player come out with a balaclava or some other head covering or other illegal equipment, again, they get one warning before they're penalized. On the second and every subsequent violation of illegal equipment, the penalty will be 15 yards and an unsportsmanlike assessed to the head coach. If the head coach receives 2 unsportsmanlike penalties, it will result in their disqualification from the game. So just a reminder as the temperatures start to cool that we need to be aware of these type of head coverings and remember that these are illegal equipment. So the next few clips we're going to look at involve scrimmage kicks, which we look at every week because, as we always say, if something crazy is going to happen, it tends to happen on kicks. And we want to take a look at a couple of different clips where we may or may not have post-scrimmage kick or PSK enforcement. And it's important when we have a foul on a scrimmage kick that we ask ourselves 4 questions. Who fouled? When was the foul? Where was the foul? And what was the foul? So let's keep that in mind as we watch this clip. And we're going to notice that during the kick, so when, there was holding by the return team. And it's around maybe the 25-yard line or so. Now, the back judge is in the midst of throwing his flag at the end of the kick. And the end of the kick is at the 50-yard line. Now, I spoke to this calling official who said that indeed the holding was recognized and he was calling the holding before the end of the kick. Now, he's throwing his flag here, but we'd also like to see a beanbag placed at the end of the kick because that could be where we would enforce a penalty from. As their flag comes out, it gets to about the 32. So a good arm here by the back judge, although the the foul would be in front of that. But as the return goes, now they're down around the 22. So we have a flag at the 32 and the runner down at the 22. But we have to ask ourselves, is this a situation in which we would have post-scrimmage kick or PSK enforcement? So we have a foul by the return team during the kick. So that would result in a PSK because the return team also is in possession at the end of the play. The end of the kick is the 50. This is where we should have a beanbag, and this would be where our enforcement spot is from. So what we're going to see is on the next clip where they enforced it to. And you can see here that it's on the 42-yard line. So they enforced this holding foul 10 yards from the spot of the foul or where the back judge threw their flag. This should have been enforced from the 50-yard line, the end of the kick, putting the ball back on the return team's 40-yard line. So it's important, again, when reporting this foul during a scrimmage kick, that we ask ourselves 4 questions. Who fouled? When was the foul? Where was the foul? And what was the foul? So let's compare this scrimmage kick to that last one. And these are somewhat similar. The returner is going to field the ball near the 45-yard line of the kicking team. Now there's excellent mechanics on this play by the crew. We have the line judge releasing down. The back judge has now given up responsibility for the returner to the wings, and they're going to notice a block in the back there right around the 43-yard line or so. Now we're going to get a long return. I just want to point out that our referee is in excellent position to rule on the touchdown. Let's go back to the end of the kick. And we're going to notice that the block in the back occurs during the return. So as we discussed before, we want to ask ourselves 4 questions. Who fouled? This was the return team. When was the foul? This was during the return. What was the foul? It's a block in the back. And where was the foul? And so we have a good flag here. So when we go to enforce this, this is no longer a PSK or post-scrimmage kick enforcement. This is a foul during a running play. And since the run ends beyond the spot of the foul, we're going to go back to the spot of the foul and enforce it from there. And as we see on the next clip here, they enforce this correctly. So just a really good job by this crew, both in their mechanics and in their enforcement of the penalty. So one more scrimmage kick, and this one's kind of a fun one just to remind ourselves what the kicking team may or may not do on a kick that ends up behind the line of scrimmage. So what we're going to see here is there is a kick that crosses the expanded neutral zone, hits the ground, and then bounds back behind the original line of scrimmage. And now it's recovered by the kicking team. And they quickly want to try to throw the ball to the referee, and so the referee blows their whistle. But let's talk about what the kicking team can actually do here on this. So when this kick goes beyond the expanded neutral zone and then rebounds backwards behind the original line of scrimmage, the kicking team can pretty much do whatever they want now. They could kick the ball again, they could throw the ball, they could run the ball, they can do anything they want. This is a live ball. We want to be careful not to blow this dead. Now in this case, it looks like the player's trying to essentially give themselves up. So blowing the whistle here is probably okay, although technically this is an inadvertent whistle because the play was still live. So just a reminder that if you ever see a play like this and the kicking team recovers the ball behind the line of scrimmage and it had crossed the expanded neutral zone first, they can still advance it, throw it, or kick it again. So we looked at 2 clips involving post-scrimmage kick enforcement, and it's important to remember the distinction between that and free kicks. So when we think of PSK as officials, it's important to remember that the PSK stands for post-scrimmage kick, not post-kick. So if we get a foul on a free kick and it's during the kick, that's a loose ball play. So let's look at this play though, and want to highlight the member of the return team that is moving in the opposite direction of the rest of their team on the beginning of this play. And the center judge or umpire here does an excellent job of picking up this foul. I spoke to this official who said that, this was an easy pickup for them because all of a sudden this player is going against the green from the rest of their team, and they had not done this at all the rest of the game. So we get a flag here for a personal foul, unnecessary roughness, and this is an excellent pickup by this official. Now, as this clip goes on, we're going to see a coach out on the field. Now, we certainly can't hear what they're saying. We don't know if they're yelling at the official. It doesn't appear to be demonstrative, but that coach should not be out on the field. Coaches, we would ask for you to remain on the sideline. Now, the official here, you're the calling official. We would like to see a little bit more urgency in reporting this foul to your referee. You're 50 yards away from them. So let's have a little urgency in going to our referee to report this foul. Now, we had a penalty during a free kick. That is a loose ball play. And so this should be enforced 15 yards from the previous spot, meaning that we would have a kickoff again. What we're going to see is that the crew enforced this half the distance from the succeeding spot. This was a touchback, so the succeeding spot was the 20-yard line. And so they moved it back to the 10, and that's incorrect enforcement. This should have been enforced 15 yards from the previous spot of the 40-yard line, and the kicking team would kick off again. So before most games, we're going to talk to coaches of both teams, and we're going to ask them if they have any special plays, trick plays, formations, anything that we need to be aware of so that when we see it, we're prepared during the game. We also want to then talk to the coaches about any such plays so that we are prepared and make sure that we're talking through this. This is an example of a play where the coaching staff did inform the officiating crew that they would have this formation, but I spoke to the referee who said they did not ask a lot of additional questions beyond that. And we are going to have a formation here that spreads out 7 players across the line of scrimmage. We have 5 players, 50 through 79, but the player here in the middle of the field, I believe, is number 1. And they are going to be covered up because they're on the line of scrimmage. They have 4 players to their left, a snapper, and another receiver to their right. So they are on the line of scrimmage and covered up. So as we see here, we're going to get a forward pass play, and the pass goes beyond the line of scrimmage. So now we have 2 fouls on this play. So first off, as soon as this pass crosses the line of scrimmage, we have an ineligible player downfield. However, that ineligible player now also touched the pass. So now we have 2 fouls, one for ineligible downfield and the other for illegal touching. As a crew, this is a pretty easy enforcement. We should decline the ineligible downfield and take the foul for illegal touching. They have the same yardage, but the illegal touching has a loss of down component to the penalty as well. Now, unfortunately on this play, we didn't get a flag for either. So it's important to remember that when we are pre-gaming with the coaches and they mention things, that we are on the lookout to make sure that what they're doing is legal. The last 2 clips that we're going to look at involve violations of Rule 717. And Rule 717 says, after the ball is ready for play and before the snap begins, no false start shall be made by any offensive player. Furthermore, the rulebook will define a false start as a shift of feigned charge that simulates action at the snap, any act clearly intended to cause the defense to encroach, or any A player, offensive player, on their line between the snapper and the player on the end of the line after having placed their hands on or near the ground, move their hands, or makes any quick movement. So as we remember those rules, let's watch these last 2 clips. Now, admittedly, the first one doesn't have the best film, but let's watch the quarterback. This is a hard count, but their entire body flinches. We're going to get a flag here, and per our state rules interpreter, this should always be a false start. It's obvious what the quarterback is trying to do here. They're trying to get the defense to encroach. we should have a flag here for a false start. So when we're talking about Rule 717, we want to expand on that a little bit. And sometimes the offense will do things, again, trying to get the defense to encroach. And it's important to remember that whether or not the action by the offense draws the defense into the neutral zone is not a determining factor on whether we rule a false start. In other words, the defense doesn't have to encroach for that to be a false start penalty. So on this play, we're going to notice that the offense shifts, and there's nothing wrong with this shift. It's fluid, there's no sudden movement. But now watch what happens. So we do have the defense encroaching here. However, we know exactly what the offensive team is trying to do here. And there is some abruptness of movement. There is some speed of movement. And from our SRI, each and every one of us knows exactly what the offensive team is trying to do here. This action is and always has been illegal. We should throw a flag here for a false start. And that's actually what this crew does. So the shift is fine, but this sudden movement by the line is a violation of Rule 717. And regardless if the defense encroaches, this is a false start. Well, that is it for this week's Clips of the Week. As always, we appreciate all of the support and for all of the officials and coaches who have sent in plays for review. All rules and clips have been vetted through Oregon State Rules Interpreter Kevin Hatfield. If you have a play you'd like us to consider or review, please send it to the email address on your screen. Best of luck to everyone with their games this week, and we'll talk to you soon.